Hey, Rupa.
Hey, Chaz.
How are you doing?
Good. It's so good to see you in this way.
I
I'm
know.
grateful and excited.
I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me.
Of course.
Y'all, Rupa and I met years ago, like 6 years ago, when we were both at Teach for America. Rupa was the director of alumni and external engagement, and I was just getting my feet wet outside of the classroom and director of leadership and learning for Teach for America. So, Rupa, I'm so happy you're here. When I was doing research on you, I found out that you are a twin.
I am a twin. Yes. I have a twin brother.
Oh my gosh, I never knew that. And so, if you can just introduce yourself to us and maybe talk more about your career and how you got to this place, that'll be really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So I let's see, grew up in the South Bay in Cupertino, where Apple is headquartered, and I have a twin brother and an older brother. And I think through my life, it was always a bit hard for me to find my voice and find my confidence because I am more of a soft-spoken person. And so writing became like the vehicle where I felt like I could express myself more freely, and really loved journalism and was like the co-editor of the high school newspaper when I was in high school. So kind of started my career as a journalist, and I went to college and I studied English and worked for like a bunch of little magazines, unpaid, just trying to get experience. And I loved storytelling. I loved the idea that like the stories we're telling inspire us, they move us, they allow us to like see all our shared humanity. But at the time in 2008, when I graduated from college, there were like no jobs in journalism. So I ended up sort of starting my first job in advertising on the business side of journalism and really didn't like that, and pivoted into nonprofit journalism. So I worked, as a reporter, and then I worked in youth development. And at that time, there were, a bunch of different youth development programs in San Francisco. And so I was at an organization that was doing journalism and youth development, and kind of fell into really loving working with young people in education. Decided to apply to Teach for America, did TFA in Newark, New Jersey, and taught in the classroom, middle school, which was really great. Obviously challenging to like a learning curve. And I guess the through line for career has been like emergent, like learning along the way. Like, what am I noticing about what I love? And what am I noticing about what isn't as much of a fit for my strengths? And so as I came out of the classroom, I felt like, okay, I love community. I love culture. I love leadership development. Like, I love that piece of the work. And I am not as strong at the classroom management, and I'm not as strong as some like the academic rigor as a teacher. And so I ended up kind of on this journey at Teach for America, leading our alumni work and our leadership work, and then left that role 5 years ago to do that work on my own. And so, the through line has been, what am I noticing every step of the way? And I think career-wise, I've come to really love the idea of building really meaningful learning communities, especially for people of color, women, underserved leaders, and folk.
Love that. Yeah, this weekend I walked with Oni and she brought you up. I didn't even bring you up. I was like, yeah, Rupa, I'm interviewing her on Monday. But she mentioned that you put together a fellowship for Teach for America alumni. Can you talk more about that? Because I think that is part of your through line, as you just mentioned.
Yeah. So the reason I created this fellowship was that, as part of my work as like an independent solo entrepreneur, is I've done, different contract work with organizations that I love. And I've worked a long time with Teach for America Bay Area. And in the fall, I was doing a number of these like one-on-one conversations, like coffee chats, to find out more about how people are doing, how's the pandemic impacting all of us, what kind of resources or support might you need professionally. And then in that process, I reviewed like quick 10, 15-minute resume reviews. And I started to notice like a really, really big trend where I would, talk to a white male, and the way that that person might say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, this is what I'm clear on, this is what I'm not clear on, for example. And the way they might talk about their success on a resume and in conversation was with so much more confidence and clarity than a lot of the people of color I was speaking to, women of color, people across gender, across, all kinds of identity markers. But it was like the gap was huge. And I think for me, I was shocked because I felt like I know these people. Like they've like run schools, run organizations, like been like amazing leaders, amazing teachers. Like I know these people personally. And to see how difficult it was to talk about our success, to talk about our impact, to claim it, to demand what we're worth, like kind of shocked me. And so that was really the impetus where I started to talk with, amazing colleagues at Teach for America Bay Area and say like, what would it look like to support our women of color more? And here are some ways we might be able to do that. I kind of conceptualized this fellowship as an experience to invest more in women of color.
That is awesome. And from my experience, it's much needed. One thing that I struggle with, and I think it's a continuous process, is having that clarity. Even though clarity is one of my guiding principles, it's something that I still have to be really intentional about. Like, what do I want? What is my purpose? What is my life's mission? And the fact that you're intentionally supporting people of color with that is amazing. So big kudos to you.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that I've noticed with your work is that you're exploring all these different like ways to articulate your clarity on the message you want to communicate and the work you want to do. And you're open to different ways of doing it, which I think is really cool and exciting.
It is exciting. However, it can be very overwhelming. But I've been intentional about this stage in my life in this phase. And I'm intentionally saying that this is my exploratory. And so I'm letting go of structure in a sense, even though it is like kind of like a structure, but I'm letting go and and with that, I'm seeing what comes my way. So thank you for recognizing that. Yeah.
Of course.
And so you also mentioned in your intro that 5 years ago, you made the conscious choice to support and step out of working corporate and build something for yourself. Can you talk to us and what have you built?
Yeah, it's so wild that we're talking today because 5 years ago, my mom passed away to the date today. And I know you've had a lot of loss in your life as well. And that was the catalyst for me leaving my full-time role and wanting to build my own business. And to kind of articulate that a little bit more, I was, working a lot. My mom passed away, got sick and passed away very quickly within a month. And so it was like the change was so quickly. And she was, just a really beloved figure in our lives. And I found myself, just on a hamster wheel of struggling with the grief, trying to work, and not really feeling like I could show up as a parent to a 1-year-old or to my job in either way, And I think her passing away so quickly also really brought up this question of like, when she was terminally ill with cancer. And so when she was sick, I started to think about this idea that like, once we're terminally ill, we have few options. But if we're not terminally ill and we are lucky to have our vitality and we may have privileges and we may have opportunities, like so much more might be possible in our lives, and that kind of experience shook me and taught me that idea, like, wow, what is actually possible for me in this moment? And so I decided to leave and start my own thing so that I could redesign my life and consider how it could look different than the way it had so far. What I've built has, again, been emergent, and every year it is evolving. I've primarily worked in education, though now I've been working across different contexts, and I've primarily designed learning experiences or supported with developing like a toolkit, a resource guide, or done lots of coaching or development, all kind of around the nexus of strengths-based leadership. So I'm like a certified Clifton Strengths Coach, and I'm really, really into that model. And kind of around strengths, around career development, around kind of inner reflection and adaptive leadership and community. So yeah, a bunch of different things. I'd say I've thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall, and I'm now kind of figuring out where I want to go.
That's beautiful. It's ever evolving.
Ever evolving.
And so as I was doing my digging, I found your top 5 strengths. It's on your website very clearly. And y'all, if you haven't done the Strengths Finder, there's a free version. I think it's called high5test.com. And you can identify your top 5 strengths. And it's super powerful to have that self-awareness of what your strengths are. And so, Rupa, I saw that your top 5 strengths are individualization, empathy, positivity, strategic, and developer. And so as I have read them off to you, what has come to mind for you?
Yes. I want to hear yours too. After this, I would love to hear yours. I feel like I might have some ideas, but yeah. So what comes to mind? Is that I actually did this, maybe 10, 12 years ago, in my 20s, and was like, eye roll. Just another, leadership assessment, blah, blah, blah. And it felt like a personality test at that time. Like, okay, I'm an empathetic person. Like, okay, I have, some of these strengths, like ideations in my top 10, not my top 5. But what happened at the time is that I really was in a phase in my life where I wanted different strengths. So I had colleagues and friends that had achiever, and they might have had so many execution or strategic, like command or self-assurance or, communication. And I felt like those were meatier strengths because I lead from relationship building, and I don't have a lot of top strengths in execution and execution and influencing. So I just felt bad. And then I think fast forward 10 years later, I decided to get certified in the pandemic. I kind of came back to strengths and was like, you know what, this is like actually a really cool model. I retook the assessment, and I took a longer assessment, which costs a little bit more money, and got to learn a lot more insights about my strengths. And I started to find a way to embrace my strengths and actually align my business to my strengths. So one of the things, for example, I noticed was that one, when I did work that led from my strengths, so let's say coaching, which is going to leverage individualization, right? The ability to kind of adapt based on the context. Developer, the desire to develop and invest in other people. Positivity, the ability to kind of use enthusiasm to motivate people to action. When the work was like a direct link to my strengths, the work became much easier for me. So I kind of shifted more towards coaching. I shifted to designing like this fellowship, for example, this 10-day health commitment that we did. Like all of these experiences were opportunities that allowed me to just lift my strengths. And then what I learned was how to point my strengths to help me in the areas that I'm not as strong in. So for example, I'm not as detail oriented, though you said I was very detail oriented in this process. I'm not as naturally detail oriented and consistent as you are. I know that's a strength of yours. And so what I do is I take my strengths and I point them to my weaknesses. So I say like, well, what motivates me? to be detail oriented, right? It's like, I'm motivated by the relationship. So I'm motivated by you having a really good experience with me, in this process, feeling respected, feeling like your time was valued, feeling like I valued this experience and wanted to make sure my mic was set up or whatever it might have been. I'm more motivated by the relationship than the achiever piece, the idea that like I could be perceived as somebody who's like, always getting things right and checking off my list. Like that's a great strength too. It just doesn't motivate me. So then over time, I've found, okay, how do I align my work to my strengths? And then also if I'm not as strong as it, how do I use my strengths to motivate myself to do the work instead of just like, why am I not a great detail oriented person? Like, I wish I was different, like why, instead of beating myself up. So it's a long explanation, but it really has transformed my life. So you can see that I am passionate about it.
Yeah. And having that self-awareness, I feel makes you move in the direction that's so aligned to who you are. And with that, even though there's challenges that still arise, no matter what you do, it just makes it simpler versus a little bit challenging. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
like
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it kind of, it's like a sigh of relief, and there's a bit more of like a flow because we're clear on like, oh yeah, these are just the things that come naturally to me, just like naturally occurring talent and strength. And then, there's a bit of like a softness around what maybe might not be as natural. Do you know your top 5?
Yeah, while you were talking, I had to look it up though.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
I know, it's all good.
But my top 5, the last time I took them, empathy, connectedness, learner, self-assurance, and harmony.
Oh,
yeah. And so a lot of mine are relationship building, similar to what you were saying, and then influencing as well. And then I do have some strategy there with the learner. But my biggest one that I can see very clearly is that empathy piece.
Yeah.
When I saw self-assurance as one of my top, I'm like, really? Because I find myself, I am very confident. However, being a Black woman in mostly white spaces, I do have that second, like I do second guess myself a lot in regards to what I produce. But yeah, so when I saw that self-assurance, it was reaffirming like, girl, you are confident, you know what your value is, so yeah.
I love that. I mean, I can totally see so many of those. Like learner, as I've always from the beginning. And interestingly, when we first met, it was years before, probably when I was early in my job at TFA, and you met me for coffee with your daughter at a coffee shop, and you just wanted to learn. You're like, okay, I just want to make the connection. Like, what opportunities are out there? Like, I want to grow. And I remember that. And I think your daughter was like 3 back then, 3 or 4, which is so crazy because she's now like 10 or 11. And we talked about like her name and like her birth name and her energy. And anyway, it was like a really fun connection, but I saw the learner from the beginning and have seen it as you've tried on different ventures and like really grown so much with your professional impact. And I think self-assurance, I always feel like it comes out in your clarity on really not being so focused on what other people are doing, and having some clarity on, finding your own way and figuring out your own path and being kind of less worried about what someone else is doing. That's what I've noticed.
Wow. Thank you, Rupa.
Yes.
That speaks what you just did. I can only see, or I can only imagine the impact that you're having on your clients. And just one thing that Oni did say when we were walking the lake is like, you are such a good listener. And, people can say that, oh, I do level 3 listening all the time. I'm very aware. But the fact that you can remember that like back in the day, like my daughter, that was 7 years ago, y'all. And the fact that she can remember that shows that you really are in tune, like not just listening for the words, but actually just being very present in the moment. And
Thank
so I commend you.
you.
Yeah. And so when did you mentioned that your mom's
Yeah.
unfortunate passing
Yeah.
really motivated you to make this big life decision.
Yeah.
And I really believe that adversity really is a blessing, right? In disguise.
Yeah.
And throughout this 5 years
Mm.
that you've been having your business, because that is a true testament to your true work, 5 years in business, what has been the number one driver for you to keep going
Mm-hmm.
and not give up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, maybe the biggest motivator has been finding that working for myself and trying to build this business has allowed me to feel like the work that I'm doing and the time that I spend doing it is more aligned to what gifts I have and how I want to impact people in the world. So when you're at an organization, you're pulled in so many different directions, right? And you have control over some things and you don't have control over a lot of things. And then on the flip side, you get benefits and health insurance, and development opportunities and all these things you don't get when you're working for yourself. So I think for me, what I've noticed is, it's a trade-off and it's tough. That it's tough. But what I've noticed is like every day I wake up getting to have more agency and more control over the kind of work I do, the impact I can have, and what I can like roll off and not do, right? I don't, and I like that. One. And then the other is I have young kids, and so being able to, for me at this point, it still feels really motivating to try to build this out so that when my children are sick, when they have needs, when things come up, like I can flex on my own, and it's a learning curve, but I can flex on my own instead of having to worry about like, what is this person going to think? And what is that person? And like, having to kind of be in that dance of getting permission to adjust my plan or my work. I like that this, business allows me to make that choice for myself. And that really motivates me to continue trying to grow it.
Look at that smile. It's like, yes, all my hard work.
I mean,
And
there's been lots of challenges, it's not, so I don't want to,
Mhm.
I don't want to skip over that too.
I was just about to click into it. So,
Yeah.
because I had a guest, Dr. Charles Cole,
Oh my God.
and yes, I know, he's amazing.
One of
And
a kind.
truly,
Truly.
truly one of a kind.
Truly. Yeah. I feel that.
And yeah. And so one thing that he said that really has marinated with me and stuck with me is the importance of a 9 to 5, but
Mhm.
also the importance of a 5 to 9.
Mm.
And that's what I am in right now.
Mm.
Right. I have a full-time job to pay my bills. That's security.
Yeah.
And in the evenings and the weekends, and even right now during my lunch break,
Yeah.
I am pursuing my 5 to 9, my passion and what motivates me. The
Yeah.
scariest part is that I know that I want to eventually work full time for myself,
Yeah.
but I'm scared because with all the things you just mentioned, not having that health insurance, not having the stability of a check, and so can you maybe think back to one of the most challenging moments of being an entrepreneur and how you overcame that?
Yeah. I mean, one, I'll say what you're saying is so real. And the thing I always try to mention very clearly is that, like, if I'm being truly honest, I don't know if I'd be doing this if my husband didn't have a full-time job with health insurance. Like I just don't, Like, I believe that is the privilege that allowed me to make that choice at that moment, when I left my full-time role. And even to this day, we have 2 kids in childcare, and we have a mortgage. And so it's like, it still remains to be true. And I think it's really important to just be honest about our circumstances, that the fact that right now he continues to be in a stable, consistent job allows me to be able to flex in this way. At the same time, I think for our relationship and our family, what it also allows is when things are very stressful for him, and, because he's in a full-time role with lots of expectations, that I can flex when we need for the kids. And it allows kind of both of us to take care of the many needs that we have and split it up. So there's kind of, I guess what I'm trying to also articulate is like, I can do this in part because of our arrangement. And also our arrangement also helps him be able to do what he's doing. And so there's a bit of a give and take. And so I almost can't answer the question. Like, if I was just solo, could I make the money? And I have friends who have done it, but I'm not sure because I've never done it without that partnership. I think the second piece around the biggest challenge was that in the pandemic, I had my son in 2020, and I had spent a few years building up my business, like getting some consistent contracts, which was super hard in the beginning. It's like, how do you get work? Like, how do you get a contract? Like, how do you get people to hire you? And I don't have a lot of influencing, right? So it's like, it's not like I was naturally great at like, here's why I think I'd be a great fit to do this project. I kind of had to learn those skills. So the biggest challenge was definitely in the pandemic. I had my son in 2020. I was, really anxious, struggled with depression after having him, and really felt lost and felt like I had to kind of rebuild my business, and didn't know how, because I had taken time off to be with him. I watched him for like an extended period of time. He had a lot of health issues. He's doing great, but he had like a lot of eczema and food allergies and lots of appointments. So the challenge of trying to figure out how to rebuild my business was tough. And I think the choice that I made that helped me was that I took on this small contract, like I mentioned, of the work. I took on this small contract with Teach for America Bay Area, a longtime client, to do these one-on-ones. And I took it on saying, this is a small contract, but like, I just have a bigger vision. Like, I really believe that I can do like a lot more work with this organization. I believe like I can see some patterns and opportunities that will unfold. And I just think meeting with people one-on-one is really good work. And to be able to like build that into a scope felt like a great opportunity. And so as I took on that like tiny opportunity, I kind of made a bet and was like, I think it's going to turn into something bigger. And I'm willing to kind of do more than maybe what I'm even being paid for, with like a long-term bet in mind. And that worked out for me, where it's like, that was really great. And then we were to scale up with Elevate and with other ways that I'm working with that organization. And then it kind of just snowballed into, working with other organizations, and it all grew. So I'd say that was the challenge. And then that's kind of one way I navigated through it.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about what you mentioned in the beginning, because that resonates so much with me in regards to privilege risk.
Yeah.
And it's a term that I've become super familiar with. And I'm actually doing an episode this season on privilege risk.
Oh.
And it's something that I'm trying to build myself so that I can have the privilege to take a risk on myself.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you are owning your privilege in this, in regards to you have a partner that can provide the family stability while you go out and pursue your dreams. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Something else that I wanted to talk about is on your website, and y'all, I will put all of her Rupa's information in the notes, but I really am inspired by how clear your website is. And that just speaks to what you just mentioned, clarity, right? Having clarity in your own vision, it shows up on your Instagram, it shows up on your website, right? And so one of my guiding principles is clarity.
Yeah.
And I think that once we have clarity, nobody can stop us, right? If like we're consistent. And so on that, how do you get to the point of you have two children, right? You have two children, you have a husband, which is, we already know what that entails, right? But with all of these things that you're juggling, how do you have a formula that you follow in regards to how you gain clarity so that you can move your business and yourself forward?
Wow, what a great question. Formula for gaining clarity. I mean, I think I honestly would go back to, for me, I mean, the foundation is the strengths work. Like as I decide what to take on or what not to take on moving forward, the more I can align it to my strengths, the more like for me, it's like, it makes the clarity easier. Right. So if someone were to come to me and say, I am designing and presenting at executive level leadership meetings, and I'm, looking for someone to thought partner with me on kind of strategic thinking and how to present like a 3-year plan. Well, when I think about my strengths, I think, you know what, I've done that kind of work before, but actually like that's not really aligned to my top strengths. And so in the past, I would get myself involved in opportunities because they were opportunities like, oh, you're a really great colleague. And like, I would love to help you. I'd love to help you and make some money, and design maybe some experiences for your executive level meetings. And we could, I know what a strategic plan, but that has been the clarity is like, actually, it's not my top strength. There are people that love doing that, and like they're a better fit. And 2, it's going to take me a ton of time, more time than if I was doing something from my strengths to figure out how to do this well and to feel really good about it. So that's been my guiding principle is if it doesn't align to my strengths, my talents, or how I'm trying to grow professionally, I just say no. And I pivot. And then I think the 2 and 3 of the clarity piece has been, aligning my work to my values. So you brought up the privilege. What was the term you used?
Privileged risk.
Privileged risk. Yeah, that's a great term. So I think when I think about my circumstance, like one, I have always chosen impact work. Like I'm around a lot of people who work in tech, who make a lot of money, and like over and over and over, it's like good for them. But for me, I am driven by something different. And yet all of us in impact work are trying to figure out how do we make an impact and also make a living? They shouldn't be, why do we have to suffer because we want to do good work in the world? So we're all trying to figure that out, myself included. But I think, the piece that I've tried to figure out is the second piece around values. And once I figured out like what really calls to my heart, I just grabbed onto it. And so when it comes to values and equity, I just started to notice through all of this work, like, wow, there are all these ways that leaders of color are just not getting access to opportunities, experiences, getting paid, not getting the training. And my parents worked in corporate America many years ago. So even though I may have my own insecurities and underconfidence, like I grew up with access to hearing some conversations while they might practice interviewing. Like I have like 35 years of privilege that has kind of been poured into me in small bite sizes. And so for me, I just feel really called and fired up by like how inequitable our system is and what way I can like pivot my work to be in service of just helping other people get more access, tools, tricks, support, which they just weren't born into. And, you know, I'm trying to find a way to build a business too, like not to just sort of do the work and also not be able to kind of take care of my family. But that is like the clarity for me, is once I saw it, I felt like I ran towards it, and I'm just continuing to run.
I absolutely love this type of clarity.
Mm.
And as you were talking, I started to think about the Japanese concept
Mm.
of a reason for being.
Oh, yeah. Been seeing that in the news
Ikigai.
lately.
Have you heard of that? Ikigai?
I've been seeing it because of Marie Kondo's been in the news lately.
Oh,
But that's interesting that you brought it up. I have seen it.
yeah. And it's, if you look it up, if you look up Ikigai, it's Ikigai, there's a diagram that you'll
Yeah,
see.
3.
Yeah, no, it's 4.
Oh, is it
4.
4? Oh, amazing.
So
Yeah.
it's like what you love,
Yeah.
what you're good at, what you can be paid for,
Mm.
and what the world needs.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've already found it. And I feel like you're so far ahead. And
No.
I know comparison is a thief of joy, but I just really want to highlight, like when you're talking, you have this great sense of what your calling is, it feels like. And I just really wanted to highlight that.
Well, one
Yeah.
thing I'll mention, one, it's interesting because if we had this conversation, I would say the same thing about you. Like, oh my God, you've built multiple businesses. Like, you know how to do social, you make great reels. Like, I can't even figure out how to put a caption on my reels. Like you know, you have like, you're a professor, like you've taught, you've coached. I would feel all those, like, you know, everything you're saying about me, I feel about you. And so it's interesting how we're our own biggest critic. But the one thing that I think has freed me is that I have this clarity on this really calls to me. But I also have allowed myself over the last maybe year to like break open the box on who I am or who I'm not. And so it's allowed me to be open to saying, this is what calls me, but other things might call me too. Like I'm working with coaching some, you know, white men, and it's been meaningful too. And if I can feel like I can provide value and they are having an experience that's enriching them, like I'm open to learning in that experience too, if it feels right on both ends. Or, you know, I just did a bunch of stuff. I'm like, well, maybe do I want to like try to, you know, write and post about trying to spend less money? Like, you know, do I want to kind of document that journey and see what that's like? And that allowed me to notice like, oh, wow, like people really want to talk about money, you know, and it's really hard because a lot of us, you know, are still trying to figure out how to, you know, you have like amazing spreadsheets. And that's like one area where I've always struggled with feeling more confidence. And then I started to find like, oh, the people I'm working with really want to talk more about wellness. They want to talk more about money. They want to talk more about access. And so I've both led with clarity, but I've also really like let go of feeling like that there is only one way forward. And I'm trying things out along the way to notice like what to add into the equation that might not have been on my radar before. Like money was just not one on my radar before. Like spending less, you know, shopping our closet, you know, consuming less wasn't on my radar before. So yeah.
I love those. I love those posts, by the way.
Oh,
Shopping your
thanks.
closet.
It's
Like,
so
look at
funny.
this.
It's like, I just, you know, yeah, I just thought like, I'll try it out and see how it goes. And I've noticed that people love those the most. And so that's kind of an interesting learning.
Yeah, it really adds another element to you. You know,
Oh,
like I never would have thought that, oh, Rupa's into fashion. Well, you've always been really fashionable, but you
no.
know, yeah, shopping your closets are really good content.
Yes.
Or is really good content. And so as mentioned, I have my own personal guiding principles.
Yes.
And when I went to your site, I saw that you've developed signature winning 5 S's framework, the strengths, stories, skills, strategy, and support. Can you
Yes.
share more about what these are and the impact they've had on individuals?
Yes. I'm like literally going to my website right now so I can go through the list because there's so many of them of the 5. Um, okay, let's start with go through them one more time.
All right.
Strengths, skills, strategy.
Let me pull it up.
Pull it up. It's
All
like,
right. So the signature winning 5 S's
yes.
framework: strengths, stories, skills, strategy, support.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was trying to build my website out and trying to figure out like, what is my way and how do I bring all these pieces together, I started to play around with these words and, you know, built out this framework. And the way I think about it is like strengths is really the foundation for all the work I do. And if it's possible, I like to know people's strengths and I like to bring them into our work together, whether it's coaching or facilitation, or whether it's like co-hosting a health commitment like we did. And there are many times where like I'll go back to that and name it for other people and for myself. So that's a foundation. And then stories, as I mentioned, I've always been a storyteller and a writer. And with my work with organizations and individuals, I'm really interested in helping people articulate their stories in order for them to feel clearer about who they are and how they're showing up in the world, but also in order for them to feel more empowered about the impact that they can make and what they can ask for. And so I always think of like, for me, that piece feels like maybe something unique about my work and how I feel like I can support people. And then I continue to do everything around skills. So I'm really somebody who loves building skills, but I like to be in the space of helping other people build skill. And I'm, right now in this phase where I'd like to support people to build adaptive and technical skills. And then, strategy comes down to kind of what we're talking about right now, like based on your skills, who you are, how you show up, what your strengths are, like how might we bring that all together to help you clarify what do you want, where are you now, and how might we leverage what you have to get there. And then the support is just like, what kind of support do you need from me or other people? Like I'm a big believer in community. I'm a big believer in, showing up for each other. And so once we can articulate where we want to go, where we are now, how we might leverage like these different tools to get there, we can then also say, and what do we need, outside of ourselves to just have a little bit of support along the way. So that's kind of the framework.
I think that every part is important, but that last part, that support part,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but in my community, my small group of friends,
Yeah.
that's the part that we struggle with the most, is
Yeah.
being really intentional about like, oh, I need some support. Who's going to hold me accountable to this? Who can I go
Yeah.
out to? Who do you know that I can reach out to get the support? So I really appreciate you adding that piece.
Yeah. And I think as like the work that I want to do and grow in is building more professional communities, so that we don't have to do all of the constant thinking around what kind of support do I need? Okay, should I text this friend? Should I ask this thing? Should I set up this coffee? But that the structures are already in place so that, let's say you join like a community for women of color, entrepreneurs. It's like, okay, twice a month, there are group coaching calls. Twice a month, there are, workshops to learn this new skills. There is this accountability structure and this tool we're using on Slack where we can post it every week. And so my hope is to be able to contribute more opportunities and spaces so we can support each other professionally, but also have personal relationships as well, in spaces that we feel good in.
Super important. Super important. And one of my final questions before we get to the rapid fire is, it sounds like you have a very successful, when I say success, it's by your definition of success. But it sounds like you have a business that you've been able to sustain. What is your vision for your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, like I did lead up into it a little bit, where I think my big vision, my dream would be to build, like I mentioned, like a professional network, a professional community for, I think, BIPOC women and non-binary femmes, like a sort of space that's a bit more centered on a woman's experience, a woman of color, and that, you know, I could build out some kind of membership or, you know, hybrid online, in-person, ongoing experience where people could get, you know, coaching, they could get peer support, they could develop skill, they could, you know, also focus on like the other pieces of the pie, like wellness and money management and boundaries. I mean, this is like pie in the sky dream vision, but there are some really great organizations out there that are doing, you know, that have different kinds of professional communities. And my dream would be to, you know, and that's where I feel scared, is like trying to launch something bigger than what I've done right now. I'm more comfortable being like a small fish player. And so the discomfort is in trying to pursue a bigger vision and, you know, figuring out what that model would be and how to design it, and, you know, who to bring in, all those pieces. That's my big vision. And then I think the second is just holding like big dreams and big vision with, for me, like my innate desire to also just live a simple, meaningful life, you know, to just not get caught up in chasing money or chasing influence or status or followers or any of that kind of stuff, because ultimately, like, I really care about the small, simple things, you know, a healthy body, healthy family, everybody feeling cared for, you know, supporting my communities, living with intention, not living with excess. You know, I that to me is where I try to come down, like big vision, but also like, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to, you know, I don't know, like, and also, I also small vision too.
But that small vision will have a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the anchor, you know, to, to keep the clarity. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's power in having that small, I wouldn't even call it small
Yeah.
vision. You know, I think there's so much power with less is more.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get distracted by the shiny object, right? Like, oh, look at that over there, big, better, right? And I think the more clear we are on what we'll say yes and no to, as you mentioned earlier, and what our values are, which it sounds like simplicity, no excess, right? It'll help us with our visions and moving forward without sacrificing who we are, but we're still making big impact because we're moving forward. And so what you just said really resonated, and it's something that I always have to come back to too. And that's something that I've been struggling with recently, from moving from nonprofit to tech. I'm one of the tech people now, but I see that you're about to say something.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm happy to hear that you're, you know, all of it is needed. You know, I don't have like an opinion on nonprofit or tech. Maybe I'll be in tech in a year. You know, it's like our journeys are all evolving. So, but yeah, I could see how that is a transition. It's a different kind of environment. What kind of work are you doing now in tech?
Learning and development still. Yeah. Yes. It's dope. I wanted to, I was saying that to say that values throughout our life change.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, a decade ago, when I first got into education, I really valued impact. I really valued community. But after a decade being in education and working in nonprofit, my values shifted because I really wanted my family to have that financial freedom,
Yeah.
which helped me make my decision. Having my clarity on my values
Totally.
really helped me make the decision to transition. As I'm working in tech, and while I have the flexibility to focus in on my family and have some contract gigs with OUS, with Oakland Unified and Teach for America,
Nice.
I'm realizing that my values are shifting once again, and it's becoming more focused in back to the impact work. And it goes back to that ikigai, right? It's like, what is the impact that I'm having on the world? And that's something that I'm trying to discover right now in this exploratory stage.
Yay.
So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like the impact, it sounds like you may rediscover the impact work in a different way than you pursued it 10 years ago. You know, it's like, we can have impact through education and in the classroom. We can also have impact in this way that you're exploring now, and the way you've been sharing your journey with your family and your lessons along the way. Like, there's all these emergent ways that we learn we might be able to have an impact. And then sometimes we find like that's actually more fulfilling than we expected or that we knew possible. So I see you and I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's place for all of it.
Yes. Yes. All right, Rupa. Thank you so much for joining me. Before I let you go, I do have some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for them?
Yes.
All right. First one, what is your zodiac sign?
I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And favorite artist and type of music?
Ooh, I love, that's a great question. I love like, Afro beats. I love reggaeton. My all-time favorite, honestly, is Lauryn Hill. It's my first CD I ever bought.
Oh my gosh, Lauryn Hill. Yes. Have you seen her live before?
No? Oh yeah, I have. Back in Oakland, like maybe I want to say like 2010.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Next question. Favorite place you've traveled to?
Favorite place would be, I haven't traveled a lot recently. Brazil, maybe 15 years ago. It's really beautiful country.
I bet the people are beautiful too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Really warm, like energy and heat.
If your younger self can meet you as an adult, what would they be most proud of?
I think they would be proud of how I have learned to listen to my own voice more as I've gotten older and focused less on what everybody else is doing and thinking.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Do you believe in the power of manifestation?
Totally. Yes.
What is a project you're working on that you're super excited about?
Oh, that's a great question. I am super excited about, I'm wanting to design a in-person experience in the spring, like a one-day, half-day, part creativity, part career, part wellness. That's like not a conference, but yeah. And I'm excited about working on it.
That sounds amazing and much needed for sure.
Yay.
Let me know when it is.
Yes, of course.
All right. Do you want to retire? Why or why not? If so, what age do you want to retire and what are you doing to get there? I know it's a big question.
Ooh, wow. Well, I guess one of my big 2023 goals is to just, hone in more on my financial wellness and the things that I feel confused about as I've tried to grow. So do I want to retire? I I would say I am not so motivated to want to retire early, like retire at 40. I also can't afford it. I'm not saving that kind of money. So don't want to retire right now, not ready. Still want to work. And I don't know what age I will retire. Don't know what the world's going to look like.
Right. And fun fact, in Japanese, they don't even have a word for retire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't retire out there. They keep
Yeah,
on
that's
going.
a work heavy culture.
But they have one of the highest longevity rates. So
Yeah.
that probably contributes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep. And then last question, what does no limit mean to you?
I guess to me, no limit means like allowing ourselves to dream and ideate and explore beyond our wildest imagination.
Mm. Yes and yes. Rupa, thank you for taking the time to connect with me. I am super excited to share this with the world. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'm so grateful to be here. It was so fun to talk to you. And I really believe in you and what you're trying to do and what you've already done. And, feel like you move with deep clarity and conviction, even as you're figuring it out. So honored to be here and to be witness to you.
Thank you. All right, folks. Thank y'all so much for joining the No Limit podcast with your host, Chas. I'll be in touch. Peace. Awesome. Thank you, Rupa.
You're welcome. I think